Carrie Mae Weems works presently as an installation artist, but her career began as a documentary photographer. Though she is known as documenter, photography is not so much her medium as it is her subject. In the development of her work, Weems increasingly explores the cultural mode of the photograph as scientific document, commercial commodity, and artistic medium. The artist refers to herself as an image maker, connoting the manufactured existence of the photograph and the constructed narratives of persons of African descent implicit in these images. In her photography series, The Kitchen Table, the artist dismantles the idea of the objective documentary lens. In her series, the artist retells a personal and subjective narrative of Black family life. Weems makes repeated use of a single set, a starkly lit kitchen with a barren table, and situates the viewer in a conventional domestic setting. Accordingly, the photographer directs the complicit actors, presumably her friends, her daughter, and her partner, in casual and natural poses to call attention to the cinematic narrative implicit in this picture. At first glance, the photographs appear to be spontaneous shots, as if documenting a fleeting moment. Only when confronted with other staged images using the very same kitchen set does the viewer begin to understand the deception of the photographer. In this series, each photograph functions as a visual anchor for the implicit narratives produced in the cultural imagination. Any single photograph in this series must be viewed either in the context of the whole series or as part of a triptych in order to understand that these scenes, like any other documentary photograph, are constructed by the artist as part of a cultural narrative. Interestingly, it is this characteristic dimension of Carrie Mae Weems' work that defines her as an installation artist rather than as a photographer. Weems' photography necessarily functions within the spatial context that the artist creates herself, for example, in the narrative kitchen series. Where this aspect materializes is in the installations of her latest career, when Weems begins to reappropriate well-known images that function in a Eurocentric context to legitimize and naturalize the supremacy of white biology. In creating her own contextual space, Weems rejects the default Eurocentric context from which the photograph operates. Her series, From Here I Saw What Happened and I Cried, consists of photographic objects captured in a sinister background. The circular images are tinged with an angry red dye and enclosed by a black frame, reminding us of the original daguerreotype documents on which these works are based. Weems makes use of appropriated historical documents that either refer to or exist as photographs and collectively assemble a Eurocentric scientific discourse of persons of African descent. Her work includes images loaded with meaning from the scientific typologies of enslaved Africans commissioned by Louis Agassiz that were heralded as imagistic proof of white supremacy. It is this assumed position of the photograph as objective document, as well as its exploitability for creating mythologies, which Weems evaluates. In Weems' work, language is crucial to photographic meaning. Weems intervenes in the written history of photography and science by imposing a heavily hand-blasted script over each of these images. These words make explicit the narrative she tells through her work. Advances the notion of radical subjectivity in her work to question photography's historical claim to objectivity. The title of the series reminds us of the artist's subject position, which is heavily reinforced by her personal address to the wronged and enslaved. In her constructive space, the appropriated images work to denaturalize the so-called objective truth of the camera. If anything, photography for Weems seems to carry a journal or diary-like use, as if she is using images to record experiences and her deepest thoughts about them. Yet her rhetoric widens to a critique on social and representational domination, as these diary excerpts are not her experiences, but those of the exploited. By narrating the history of the African in the dominant Eurocentric mythology, Weems gives dignity and human worth to her subjugated topic. Other of Carrie Mae Weems' art functions to decenter dominant historical narratives. In her installation, Rituals and Revolutions, large translucent photographs printed in muslin hang from the ceiling, layered in the gallery space. These images critique the linear construction of Eurocentric history fashioned from a glorified Greco-Roman classical past. She merges the thinly separated worlds of story and history. Weems expands on her fascination with narrative. The viewer listens to her soothing voice, retelling world history as he or she passes through the gallery. The artist also makes use of the self-portrait at the beginning of the series to position herself within a history from which Black women are excluded. In this installation, Weems continues the role of an agitating storyteller, as she first began to occupy in her Kitchen Table series. Carrie Mae Weems emphasizes the first-person perspective in her work. Her personal narratives have the subversive power to rewrite the official historical record that consistently writes people out of history, or worse, into a history where they are totally denigrated. For Weems, telling her own stories is a political act. In her work, Carrie Mae Weems compels us to re-examine history. Weems' notion of radical subjectivity is taken up by other artists of African descent to re-examine history. In her poetry collection, The Venus Hottentot, Elizabeth Alexander re-examines the story of Sarah Bartman. The Hottentot Venus, 1825. There's unexpected sun today in London, and the clouds that most days sift into this cage where I am working have dispersed. I am a black cutout against a captive blue sky, pivoting nude so the paying audience can view my naked buttocks. I am called Venus Hottentot. I left Cape Town with a promise of revenue, half of the profits, and my passage home, a boon. Master's brother proposed a trip. The magistrate granted me leave. That was years ago. London circuses are florid and filthy, swarming with cabbage-smelling citizens who stare and query, is it muscle, bone, or fat? Monsieur Cuvier investigates between my legs, poking, prodding, sure of his hypothesis. I half expect him to pull silk scarves from inside me, paper poppies, then a rabbit. He complains at my scent, and does not think I comprehend. But I speak English, I speak Dutch, I speak a little French as well, and languages Monsieur Cuvier will never know have names. Now I am bitter, and now I am sick. I eat brown bread, drink rancid broth. I miss good sun, miss mother's salsa. My stomach is frequently queasy from mutton chops, pale potatoes, blood sausage. I was certain that this would be better than farm life. I am the family entrepreneur, but there are hours in every day to conjure imaginary daughters in banana skirts and ostrich feather fans. Since my own genitals are public, I have made other parts private. In my silence I possess mouth, larynx, brain in a single gesture. I rub my hair with lanolin and pose in profile like a painted Nubian archer, imagining gold leaf woven through my hair and diamonds. Observe the wordless odalisque. I have not forgotten my Xhosa clicks. My flexible tongue and healthy mouth bewilder this man with his rotting teeth. If he were to let me rise from this table, I'd spirit his knives and cut out his black heart, seal it with science fluid inside a bell jar, place it on a low shelf in a white man's museum so the whole world could see. It was shriveled and hard, geometric, deformed, unnatural.